Hello, everybody. English 338. We are in the midst. Once again, we are starting off thinking through rhetoric in different kinds of ways. You know, we spent the first part of the course on rhetorical analysis. We talked about logos, ethos, pathos. We talked about audience, context. We talked about definitions and defining Schiappa. We talked about framing, a different kind of defining, framing an argument for an audience. We talked about rhetorical situations. There's a lot of things that we talked about, but we were analysts. We were rhetoricians, right? What we were doing was we were trying to understand how people use language persuasively and what techniques they use and how effective language can be, especially in certain kinds of environmental debates. So that was our focus the first half of the course. And I will say very briefly, I am entertaining revisions. I have read everyone's paper who turned a paper in. And as soon as you feel like you want me to look at it again, you've done some substantial revising, not just catching spelling errors or, putting in some punctuation where there was none, but you've substantively, significantly responded to my comments in ways that you think are useful, share the document again with me. In fact, that's what I would say. Revise now, strike while the iron is hot, because by April 15th or so, we're going to be deep into this other project. And I do not want you to have to be doing two projects in my class at the same time. So hit me up via email, come into my office hours, talk with me about how you're planning to do this revision, and then try to get it done. You may revise as many times as you want for the grade that you feel you deserve. Revise your ass off and I will give you more points. That's generally how it works. So be thinking about that. Revising now while the ideas are still fresh in your mind will make this a better paper, and I will work with you as hard as you want to work to make sure that we ultimately agree that your paper is a success. And I want it to be a success. So, first half of the course, analysis, rhetorical analysis. You were rhetoricians. Now, second half of the course, you are rhetors. You are using language to try to persuade. Now, what are we doing? Now, we're in a project where we're going to make a digital story. And why would that be? Why would that be the way that we go? Why wouldn't we just write an essay, letter to the editor? Well, the undercurrent of some of the work that we've read so far is that a story with emotion is one of the most effective things you can do in order to bring an idea to someone. The ancient idea was that any piece of discourse, for it to be rhetorical, should teach, should please, and should move. Teach us something new, logos. Please us in terms of its emotions and in terms of its credibility, in terms of us as authors or speakers, our ethos. And finally, move us to action. Emotion and motion are from the same Latin root. We must be moved to act through the passions that we excite in other people. There has to be some kind of joy or rage or sadness or pity or fear that motivates us to think differently about an issue and ultimately to take action on it. So in terms of this paper, be thinking about those places in the world that you think need protection or need some rhetoric. I'm going to leave this open because it's not just protecting places like Table Mountain. I was there today. These are the flowers right now. It's not just protecting places that we know are environmental, that are state parks or other kinds of things like that. If we are talking about environmental debates, we are talking about any particular space or place that you think people need to learn something about and ultimately think differently about. So this could encompass any number of different things. Do you think, for example, some area has been set aside and it shouldn't be? Okay. Do you think a desalination plant has gotten a bad rap because it's actually doing good to provide more fresh water? Okay. Is there some area that you think or some factory that actually isn't polluting as much as people think, okay. Now, the regular environmental topics that we could think are useful for a course like this are still kind of open to us. If you think that there's a wetland somewhere in the world that needs to be protected, if you think there's a set-aside place, Table Mountain or otherwise, that just should not be touched by industry, okay. If there is a park near your house, maybe it should be designated a park. If there's a private piece of land that should be public, okay. Here is our chance to use footage and research and what Leon and Finkel were calling success, the success model. The idea here is that you would be using rhetoric in order to be thinking through what's going on with that particular place and trying to present an argument, a cogent argument to other people. So let me share my screen really quickly. We'll talk about what we're going to be up to this week. So this is week 9, the end of March and the beginning of April. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting the process of actually gathering some of that footage, pictures, video, interviews with people. It could be first-person accounts as you walk through the place. I imagine there's all kinds of things that you could do. But this will be the week when we start to turn from analysis into production. We're going to produce a video, and I'm going to give you plenty of time to gather some footage so that you can actually present something, stitch it together, make it look really good. That'd be awesome. So we're going to read Clifford Knapp's Developing the Sense of Place Through Native Science Activities. And you see it right here. Clifford Knapp, a Native American educator of long standing, walks us through different kinds of ways of being in nature and getting to the details and the descriptiveness and the uniqueness of the place by telling stories, by naming places, by changing positions, by comparing, by listening to the landscape, by listening to water, and so on. 25 different techniques. And I'd like you to read this piece, and I'd like you to tell me what you think about it. Like I say here, since this is a how-to reading, it doesn't have necessarily terms that I want you to use in an analysis. I want you to think through how you've used techniques like this before and how some of these techniques might be useful in a digital story. Then what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to plan to go to a place or site that could become the focus of your digital story, using at least 2 techniques from Knapp while you're there. And this, accompanying worksheet may be the real way that you get at that. Follow all the steps for your chosen techniques and actually post on it in Google Currents. Now, this could be really fun. This could be excellent. And why could it be excellent? We see some of the places that you consider to be special or interesting or in need of attention or underused, underfunded, so on. We see some aspects of these spaces or places that surround your life. And why is that cool? Well, it's week 9-ish of this course. And, it's going to be nice to see some of this footage. It's going to be nice to see some of these photos. It's just going to be kind of cool to see things you feel are important. And so I'd encourage you to use this week and then a week later on to kind of give us some of this raw footage, this data, so that we can just sort of explore it and see it for ourselves. So that is the week 9 question. As I show you right here, the week 9 question is to read over the assignment sheet for the digital story and to brainstorm. Think through a couple places that might be in need of some protecting, redefining, some understanding. People might need to learn about them. Describe a few ideas you have for how you might represent it or persuade people to feel differently about it. Which of Knapp's 25 techniques? Then, number 2, not number 3, go try them. Pick 2, Do the things, go there. Immerse yourself in that environment like Clifford Knapp wants us to immerse ourselves. And then write about what happened. It's pretty open-ended here, but you're going to have to go outside. You're going to have to be at a place. You're going to have to show me the nuts and bolts of you being in that place, some evidence that you were there and that you thought deeply about the place using some of Clifford Knapp's techniques. So I think this is going to be super fun, like I say here, because it's going to involve us sharing some small portion of our lives and our environments with other people and Google Currents. Final thing, be thinking about your project, because this is one of the weeks where we really start on it. And remember too, that of course, I'm going to make a turn where I ask you to reflect on the choices that you made rhetorically. You, in a sense, are going to analyze yourself and your production in terms of logos, ethos, pathos, audience, context, persona, defining, framing, and so on. What I'm going to ask you to do is to give me a sense of your goals and your choices. That is, if rhetoric is choices and their effects, so what effect did you hope for this particular scene or this particular interview or this particular statement to have in your video? I'm going to stop sharing really quickly. I'm going to say you all are doing great, and thank you so much for continuing to be in Perusall and continuing to be in Google Currents. You've collected a whole bunch of points from just doing that work. Almost 30 points, not sure. 12 points, okay, it's more like 20. 12 points in Google Currents and at least 8 points in Perusall comes to 20 points. 20 points so far. We might take it up to 30 by the end of the semester. A couple of people I wanted to give shout outs to really quickly. In English 338 section 2, I'm going to share my screen once again. A couple of people's posts for this last week really blew me away. I have a Ben Brooks post. She was doing some great stuff with storytelling, looking at the Beautiful Waste video. She said not too long on storytelling. Video kind of lacked at it. At the beginning, he stated how he understands that people want to look at the natural environment. Then he showed us how it looks in a concrete jungle. In the middle of the story, he shows us how dysfunctional the sewage system is that we would not normally get the chance to see. But she said the storytelling just wasn't really, we want a story to go in a particular way. We want there to be characters and we want there to be action, and maybe at a certain point there's tension or, there's conflict in some way. And maybe she thought the storytelling was lacking here. Another person's post, Nathan Grederman, was doing a whole bunch of really focused reads of the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta video through the success model. He was doing that really well. In the other class, Chase Siegel was all over it. Alexandria Romero was all over it. Look at what she did right here. Really good stuff right there. Chase Siegel made a number of interesting comments about audience, which I thought were interesting and I can't really find right now. And Heidi Renaga talking about the rhetorical power of the focus on Frank's place. And I thought that was a really awesome way that she was talking about it. And I was moved by that part of the video too. Frank's place underwater 6 times. I have to do something about that particular piece of land. How do we preserve farms and preserve the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta? Fundamental tension there, and how people sort of react in the midst of all this is just so interesting to watch. So all good stuff. Keep it up, you all. Hit me up if you have any questions. And I'll see you online. I'll talk to you via email. Thanks.